he dropped a coin into the old well. His own voice came back with every lie he'd ever told. There is a reason every tradition of divination involves a question, not an answer, a question. The oracle at Delphi did not volunteer. The cards do not spread themselves. The pendulum does not swing without a hand. Every system of knowing beyond knowing has understood that the seeker must initiate, must open themselves through the act of asking, must make themselves briefly permeable to information that does not come through ordinary channels. The well on the road to Crenfield has been at the same crossroads for longer than the road has. The villagers who live within walking distance of it have a single, consistent piece of advice for visitors who find it. Don't drop anything in, not a coin, not a pebble, not a wish. They don't explain why. They know from long experience that explaining why only makes it more likely that the curious will want to test it. Owen Farrell was a hiker with a healthy skepticism and a coin in his pocket, and the specific irresistibility of an old well at a crossroads on a bright day in June. He read the locals' warning as folklore. He respected folklore as a genre. He was a tourist, and he had 40 minutes before his next waypoint, and the well was right there. He dropped the coin. He heard himself. What came back was not the coin. The well was visible from the footpath before the crossroads, a low stone circle, unmortared, the kind of construction that predated any technique Owen could date precisely, set in the angle where two unpaved tracks met a third that had once been a road and was now a bridleway. No signage, no notice, nothing to distinguish it from 100 other field features he had passed in 3 days of walking in this part of Herefordshire. The warning had come from the woman who ran the B&B in Crenfield, offered without being asked, over breakfast, with the specific casual delivery of someone who says something every time a guest mentions they're taking the eastern footpath, because not saying it has consequences they'd rather not be responsible for. There's an old well at the crossroads past Merton Field. Don't drop anything in it. Owen had nodded and thanked her, and had thought, in the way of people who have been told not to do something by someone they consider credulous, that the well would be worth seeing. He arrived at 11:23 a.m. on a Saturday in June. Bright and warm, the surrounding fields in the full, specific green of an English June that almost justifies everything the weather does, the other 11 months. The well was exactly as he had imagined it. Low, unmortared, a circle of dark stone approximately 1 meter in diameter, the interior dark and producing the particular quality of cool air that indicates genuine depth. He leaned over the edge and looked. The darkness below was complete. No sound, no water glint. He had a coin in his pocket from the previous day's purchase, a 50-pence piece. He held it over the well's edge for a moment. He thought, with the fond self-awareness of someone who knows there being a cliché, that a well at a crossroads on a bright June morning was exactly the right place for a coin and a wish. He dropped it. He heard the coin fall, the specific pitch sound of a coin tumbling through still air in a contained vertical space, and then nothing for 4 seconds. Then, from the darkness below, his own voice. He recognized it immediately. The specific register, the accent, the slightly faster delivery he had when he was talking about something he knew well. All his, precisely his, with no distortion or delay that suggested an echo or a recording. His own voice, speaking from the bottom of a dry well at a crossroads in Herefordshire at 11:23 a.m. on a Saturday. It said, "The train was delayed. I got here as fast as I could." He stood very still. He had said this to his girlfriend Priya 14 months ago when he had arrived 40 minutes late to her grandfather's birthday dinner. He had said it in the specific delivery his own voice was currently reproducing. Slightly defensive, slightly apologetic, the cadence of someone building a preemptive case. The train had not been delayed. He had left late. He stood at the well's edge, and his own voice, from the well's darkness, continued. The next lie, told to his manager in 2021, claiming a completed report that had not been completed. Then his flatmate 3 years ago about a borrowed item he had damaged and replaced with a similar but inferior version without telling him. The lies arrived in chronological order, from the oldest accessible to the most recent, not the great moral failures, but the ordinary daily lies that accumulate in a human life without specific incident. Small deceptions, tactical omissions, the sustained gentle misrepresentations by which most people navigate their relationships with the people who have claims on their honesty. His own voice told him all of them, clear, precise, with the specific acoustic quality of the original delivery, not a transcript, but a recording. If a recording could be made at the moment of utterance and stored indefinitely in a stone circle at a crossroads. He was standing at the well's edge when the recitation ended, 23 minutes after the coin dropped by his watch. And he was, he noted with the honesty of a person who has just had a significant internal experience, not as unsettled as he should have been. He was something more complex, unsettled, and also beneath that, in the specific register of unpleasant self-knowledge, relieved, as though hearing them named had done something to the accumulated weight of them. He took a photograph from his chest pocket, a printed photograph. He carried a small pack of them for the habit of leaving visual records of the walk at significant points, of himself and Priya at the start of the route, 3 days prior. He held it over the well. He dropped it. The well received the photograph in the same silent falling quality as the coin. Then his voice again. Not lies this time. Secrets. The category beneath lies. The things he had not told Priya, not because they were untrue, but because he had judged that telling them would cost more than not telling. His voice spoke them in the same order, the same precision, the same specific register of his own delivery. He listened. He stood at the well and listened to the inventory of what he had withheld from the woman he had been with for 4 years, rendered in his own voice, with the factual quality of something that had always been a record and had simply not been accessed. When the voice finished, he reached into his pocket. He was carrying on this route, as he always carried on long walks, a small ring, not a wedding ring, nothing formal, a band of brushed silver that Priya had given him 2 Christmases prior as a something for your hand because you always fidget, and which he wore on his right index finger when he walked. He had taken it off at the start of the day, as he always did before steep descents, and put it in his pocket. He had not put it back on. He held it over the well. He hesitated. Not long. The hesitation of a person who knows they are about to do something and has a brief, clear moment of understanding that they should stop, and finds the understanding insufficient to produce the stop. He dropped the ring. The well received it. His voice spoke. It spoke the future, not the inventory of his past. The voice had moved through his lies and his secrets, and had arrived, in the logic of its own accumulation, at the next category, the future betrayals. Not probabilities or warnings, but specifics, decisions he had not yet made, rendered as though made in the specific register of his own accounting of himself. A lie he would tell Priya next month about the reason for canceling a trip. A decision he would make in 6 months that he would not tell her about for 2 years. The accumulation of small dishonesties that would, in the voice's rendering, constitute the slow erosion of a relationship he currently valued and would, in the future, value less. And would, the voice said, value less because the erosion would have been his doing, incremental and unacknowledged, until the erosion was the relationship's defining feature. He listened to his future. He was standing at the well's edge. The karmic resonator that his B&B host had been gesturing at with her unelaborated warning is not in the traditions that document it, primarily Welsh and Herefordshire folkloric records, which treat it as a truth well or confession stone without explaining its origin or mechanism, a supernatural instrument in the conventional sense. It is a structural one, a feature of certain crossroads sites that accumulate over centuries of use as points of significant human decision, the specific energy of choices not made, truths not told. The weight of everything that travels through a crossroads, carried but not acknowledged. The well at the Merton Field crossroads had been accumulating since before the road that crossed at its location was first surveyed. It did not create the lies Owen had told. It did not create the future betrayals his voice described. It only held them, returned them, with the force of everything the well had accumulated in the specific and undeniable register of the person's own voice. The weight of true being the heaviest material available in the human register. When the weight of true reached a critical accumulation, when the sequence of returns had added enough mass to the listener's already present knowledge of their own failures, the well's mechanism completed. The accumulated weight of the truth collapsed the listener inward. Not physically. The specific interior collapse of a person who has heard, in their own voice, the full accounting of what they are and have been and will be, and has found the accounting unsupportable. Owen Farrell had been standing at the edge. He stood for a long time after the voice finished describing his future. He stood in the bright June morning with the well's cool air rising against his face and the accumulated weight of 23 minutes of lies, 17 minutes of secrets, and 41 minutes of future betrayals settled in him, with the specific quality of something that had always been there and had simply, until now, not been audible. He reached into his pocket. He took out a scrap of paper from his walking notebook, the kind he used for route notes, carried in a bundle in his left chest pocket. He wrote his name on it. He held it over the well. He dropped it. His voice came back from the darkness below. It was not the voice of inventory. It was not the voice of record. It was a scream. The scream had his voice, his register, his specific acoustic signature, the sound he had never made before, but which was recognizably his. the way a cry is recognizably the person who produces it, even if it has never been produced before. It came from below the well's darkness with the force of a sound that had been waiting for exactly the weight that had been dropped to release it. The well was no longer dry. Not with water, with sound, a rising column of acoustic weight, every inventory it had accumulated in Owen Farrell across 81 minutes of open accumulation, returning simultaneously, in the same voice, from the same source, and the source was no longer at the bottom of the well. The source was the well. The source was the crossroads. Owen Farrell sat down on the footpath beside the well in the bright June morning and put his hands over his ears and sat with the sound of himself until the sound stopped. The well was quiet when he took his hands from his ears. He was at the crossroads. He was intact. He was, by every physical measure, unchanged. He stood up. He looked at the well. The well was a low stone circle at a Herefordshire crossroads, unmortared, producing cool air from a considerable depth. It was exactly as he had found it. He walked to his next waypoint. He walked for the remaining 2 days of his route. He spoke less than he usually did, which his walking companion on the final day, a retired teacher he had met at the previous night's accommodation, noted with mild concern and attributed to the weather. He returned to London. He saw Priya. He told her 3 things he had not told her before, in the specific register of someone delivering information they have been carrying for longer than is comfortable. She listened. They talked for a long time. He did not tell her about the well. He thought about this afterward. He thought about whether not telling her about the well was itself a thing the well would hold. He thought about this for a long time. He did not go back. He dropped the coin because the warning was unelaborated. He dropped the photograph because the coin had produced something extraordinary and he needed to know the mechanism. He dropped the ring because the photograph had produced the mechanism and he needed to know the limits. He dropped his name because there are no limits, because the accumulation, once opened, moves toward the complete accounting with the patient inevitability of a system that has been building toward exactly this input for exactly as long as it takes. Because standing at a well at a crossroads with your own name on a piece of paper in your hand is a moment that, once you have arrived at it, having arrived there by your own sequential choices, requires more resistance than most people have available. He had heard his lies. He had heard his secrets. He had heard his future betrayals. He had the inventory. He dropped his name anyway. The well wasn't dry afterward. That detail is the one I keep returning to. Not with water, with sound. The specific acoustic weight of everything it had collected and returned. The well's own accumulation finding in Owen's name. The last item it needed to complete its circuit and release what it had been holding. He told Priya 3 things when he got home. He didn't tell her about the well. I find this as a final image both hopeful and very slightly terrible. He listened to his future betrayals and came home and told 3 truths. The well showed him something and he acted on it, partially. He is still holding the rest. The well is still at the crossroads. He has not gone back. Neither have you, yet. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Alara, and I am your whisperer. I'll be here, waiting for you next time. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more. This has been Karma Quietly Whispers. See you soon.